This is Bow Lake in Stratford, New Hampshire, a very special place. Did you know that of all the water on Earth, 97.2% is in the oceans, 2% is in the ice caps and glaciers, and only 9 thousandths of a percent, that's 0.009%, is in the lakes. The remaining 791 thousandths of a percent, that's 0.791%, is in the groundwater, the atmosphere, rivers, and saltwater lakes. So when you look at the big picture of water on Earth, lakes are a very special habitat. New Hampshire has about 1,000 lakes and 3,000 small ponds. You might be wondering, what's the difference between a lake and a pond? Well, there's some differing opinions on how they're classified. According to some limnologists, who are scientists that study freshwater bodies, a pond is a freshwater body that is shallow enough for the sunlight to reach the bottom and support photosynthesis. This is called a euphotic zone. A lake, on the other hand, is a body of fresh water that is deep enough that plants cannot grow everywhere. It has what is called a dysphotic zone, where the sunlight cannot reach to support photosynthesis. So a lake has an upper layer of water that the sunlight reaches, or the euphotic zone, and also a deeper layer where the sunlight cannot reach, the dysphotic zone. But other limnologists believe the difference is in the water temperature. In the summer, the surface water of lakes and ponds gets warm. In a pond, there is a gradual change in temperature from the surface to the bottom. In a lake, however, the temperature change from the surface to the bottom is not gradual. There are actual layers of warm and cold water. This is called stratified. There's warm water at the top. In Bow Lake in August, the top 6 meters are about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, from about 7 meters to 11 meters, there's a change in temperature from 66 degrees Fahrenheit to 54 degrees. This is called a thermocline. And the bottom 13 to 19 meters of cold water are at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So regardless of whether a water body is called a lake or a pond, in New Hampshire, any freshwater body, 10 acres or larger, is considered a great pond, and it's regulated by the state. Bow Lake is about 1,160 acres with a maximum depth of 21 meters. Bow Lake is a lake by all of these definitions. Now let's explore this lake habitat. One important part of this habitat is at the edge of the lake or littoral zone, where you can find plants whose leaves grow up and out of the water, emergent plants, and also plants that are completely under the water, submergent plants. As the water gets deeper, there are less emergent plants. There are also microscopic plants called phytoplankton, like algae floating in the water. Phytoplankton is found in the shallows and also in the open water or the limnetic zone, where it is too deep for the rooted vegetation. Plants provide food, habitat, and oxygen for the animals of the lake. Some of the plants on the edge of Bow Lake are pickerel weed, three-way sedge, burr reed, cattails, and spike rush. These plants provide shelter for fish like the pumpkin seed, perches for songbirds, and hunting areas for wading birds like the great blue heron. Insects will lay their eggs on the leaves, and the aquatic insect larvae, like damselflies and dragonflies, use the plants for protection from fish and also as a hunting ground. Frogs, like peepers and green frogs, will lay their eggs in the shallow areas with lots of plant cover. The tadpoles will use the plants for protection and for foraging. Turtles will lay their eggs in the sandy spots on the shore, and the young will hide in the plants. Mallards will build a nest in the tall grass along the shore and feed along the shoreline. Bow Lake also has blueberry bushes growing along the edge of the lake. These provide food for the ducks and other berry-eating songbirds. Deer and moose will also visit the lake to eat the plants. Northern water snakes will live at the edge of the lake and feed on the frogs, crayfish, fish, and birds. Plants on the edges of the lake are an essential habitat for the survival of many of the animals. The open water, or limnetic zone, is another habitat in the lake. This area is too deep for rooted plants, but there is phytoplankton at the surface. This phytoplankton is an essential part of the food chain. It is the food for zooplankton, which are tiny animals like Daphnia and copepods, which are in turn food for fish fry and insect larvae. These are then food for bigger fish, birds, and snapping turtles. Near the surface in the open water, where the light can reach, there is a lot of fish activity. This is because there is food for them and also because the oxygen levels in the water are higher at the surface due to contact with the air. Birds like the bald eagle and the loon will feed on the fish in the open water. The eagles and loons also nest at Bow Lake. The eagles have a nest high up in an old pine tree on one of the islands. The loons usually nest on the edge of an island on some vegetation, rocks, or floating logs. At Bow Lake, they are given a floating nesting site to help keep them safe. The bottom of the lake is the benthic zone. In Bow Lake, the bottom can be rocky, sandy, or covered in old plant matter. Rocks in the lake are an important habitat to many animals. Crayfish, who forage on the bottom of the lake, take shelter under the rocks. Some fish use smaller rocks for nesting. Bass will sweep away dirt from the bottom of the lake to expose some gravel or small rocks to make the nest. The rocks give the fish fry hiding places until they are ready to swim up to the surface and start feeding on the zooplankton and smaller insects. Pumpkin seed sunfish use the sandy bottom for their nests. The bottom of the lake is where the decomposers are. All of the dead plant and animal matter and animal waste needs to be broken down. There are small animals like isopods and amphipods, and bacteria that will break down the matter. Over many years, the benthic layer gets larger due to the decomposition and from sediment brought in from the surrounding watershed. Lakes also increase in nutrient level over time, which leads to more plants and animals in the ecosystem. As these plants and animals die, it adds even more to the benthic layer. This leads to a succession or a change as the bottom layer gets thicker. The lake or pond will eventually turn into a marsh. As more cattails and other plants grow, it will become a wetland, and then an upland dry habitat. So as you can see, Bow Lake is home to many different plants and animals. It is also a habitat that humans use for food and recreation. On hot summer days, people use the habitat for swimming and boating. And in the winter, ice skating. Many people also enjoy fishing at Bow Lake year-round. Bow Lake is a very special habitat.